Okay, welcome. Good morning, and thank you for attending our September 14th, 2021 Family Forum. This is our second Family Forum of the 21-22 school year, but it's our first forum since school has started. So we're going to dive right in. If you haven't done so already, please make sure that you're on mute, type your name in the chat, or send it to me directly, and that is the way that we take attendance for these bi-weekly meetings. Hold on, let me turn off the annotation. There we go. 1 second. All right, let's get started. Oops, hold on 1 second. Sorry, I think my screen is frozen. Give me a moment to stop sharing and then I'll reshare my screen. All right, there we go. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Thank you. All right, here's our agenda for this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about how the past couple weeks have been going with our school opening. I have a couple short announcements to share, not too much. And then as always, we're going to wrap up with Q&A and discussion. I didn't prepare too many slides for this morning, so if you do have questions that come up, feel free to drop them into the chat or save them for the end. And we'll definitely cover all topics that are on your mind. So let's jump right in. For the first few weeks of school, we have two members who are going to be joining our Zoom right now, but they're both a little bit double booked. They're going to be coming at the second half of our meeting. But if you haven't had the chance to meet them yet, Mr. Wilson is our wonderful new assistant principal. That's a photo of him. And we also have Miss Austin, who's our awesome school counselor. So they both are visibly present at arrival and dismissal. Mr. Wilson spent a lot of time in the lower schoolyard. He's outside with kids every day. And Miss Austin has been sort of circulating around the front of the building in the morning. Again, they're both going to be logging on probably in the next 15 minutes or so. So when I see them log in to this meeting, I'm going to stop and give them the opportunity to talk a little bit about themselves, their professional backgrounds, and all of the wonderful strengths that they bring to CW Henry School. I did put both of their email addresses down on the bottom of this slide, and it is currently uploaded. I updated our website over the weekend, so their contact information does live on the Henry School website as well. Mr. Wilson is a wonderful person to reach out to, in addition to me, if you need something specific. So you can feel free to CC him on any emails that you send to me. We're in constant communication, and he supports instructionally in the school. He supports with any climate and culture concerns or issues, and also he supports, anything relating to operations. So any parents sometimes send me questions about what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, or there's this change to the dismissal, or they need to troubleshoot something. He's another person that you can feel free to include on all of those communications. And additionally, Ms. Austin, she stepped in after Mr. Brogan moved on to a high school. She is a veteran school counselor. She brings over a decade of experience in school counseling in the Northwest Philly region, which is awesome. And she's going to be working. She works across our whole school, but we are gearing up for the school selection period. So she's going to be spending a lot of time with our upper school families, our 7th grade parents, making sure that they have all the information that they need around the high school selection process. Additionally, she works with any families in the 4 or 5 grade band who might have questions about school selection, applying to magnet schools, that sort of thing. I do not believe that the school selection process has officially opened yet, but I will check. If you're not familiar with what school selection is, it is roughly a 2-month window in the school year each year. Families have the opportunity to apply to up to 5 schools in the school district of Philadelphia that may not be your neighborhood school. So if you are the parent of a child who's currently enrolled at Henry, but we might not be your neighborhood school, and you have a younger sibling who will be coming to us hopefully for kindergarten, it's very important that every family who's out of catchment applies during the school selection window. So Ms. Austin will be sending out school-wide information about this. I will be sharing lots of school-wide information about this, but any family who lives outside of our catchment boundaries and wants their child to attend Henry for the upcoming school year must apply during that window. Again, when they log on, we will come back and I'll give them a chance to, so you can put a name to a face. All right, so the next important announcement I have relates to back to school night. I uploaded our information about our back to school night to our school website over the weekend, and we are hosting a virtual back to school night next Tuesday, September the 21st from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock p.m. If you were a Henry parent last year, please know that the way we're running back to school night is going to be very similar to how we ran it last year. So there is a designated page on our school's website, henry.philasd.org. And if you look at the right-hand side on the toolbar, the first icon at the top is for back to school night. It'll bring you to this flyer. And we also have a school-wide spreadsheet where all of your child's teachers will have Zoom links that you can use to visit their classrooms. The way that we run virtual back to school night is that I share a welcome video at the beginning that is pre-recorded onto YouTube. So you don't have to watch it necessarily at 5 o'clock. You could watch it a little bit earlier or later if you'd like. But it just talks about some of our school-wide initiatives and important things that we have going on at Henry as we gear up for a whole full school year. And then the next part of virtual back to school night is that every teacher is going to be present on Zoom, and they host 3 information sessions for their classrooms. The reason that we host 3 information sessions is for families who have multiple children at Henry, so they have the opportunity to visit with multiple teachers. The teachers will be providing a general overview over what's going on in the classroom, and then usually there's a little bit of time for Q&A. It's not, back to school night is not a time to meet individually with teacher. If you need to do that, we ask that you communicate with them ahead of time to find a separate time because it moves pretty quickly. And then finally, at the end of back to school night, I will be hosting a live virtual Title I presentation where I'm going to be talking about our Title I programming for the 21-22 school year, the ways that we are using the funding, the federal funding that we receive in our Title I budget. And we always, when we talk about Title I funding, we're soliciting feedback from families and engaging in a conversation about the decisions that we are making as a school. So this flyer is uploaded to our school's website. It will be sent out on Remind today and continuously throughout the rest of the week. And please know that Zoom links will be coming to you. If you have any questions about back to school night, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute at this time. Okay. So thinking a little bit more about how the past couple of weeks have been going, I wanted to spend a brief moment or two to talk about COVID protocols. So I'm going to share a little bit around the School District of Philadelphia's in-school testing protocols for students, tell you a little bit about how it's been going at Henry, and answer any questions that you might have. So before I dive into COVID protocols for students, I do want to talk briefly around what COVID protocols are for adults. So similar to last year, and I shared this in our last family forum as well, all staff at CW Henry School participate in mandatory weekly testing for COVID-19. So 100% of the staff who work in the Henry School building, whether they are a teacher, a classroom assistant, a student teacher, or a support staff who comes from a third-party agency, they are required to participate in weekly COVID testing. Anytime that anybody in the school community tests positive for COVID and has been present in the school, I have and will continue to send out a COVID notification letter. So these are general letters that are sent to every member of the school community, students, families, and staff, letting you know if somebody has tested positive. Due to privacy, we can never identify that individual, but if your child or you, if you were in our building, or a teacher, if they are working with the individual who tested positive, anybody who's within close, what there's defined as close contact. So that is within 6 feet of distance for a time period of 15 minutes or more. If that applies to you, that person would be contacted directly by the School District of Philadelphia's Office of Student Health Services or by our school nurse, Nurse Annalie. So in the first week of school, we did have one individual test positive for COVID-19. They had come to school on the first day of school, August 31st. And because of that case, we did have to inform some families of a direct contact. And we had a number of kids who did quarantine at home. I am very glad to say that nobody additionally contracted COVID-19. There was not an outbreak or a spread within the school. It was isolated to the one student who brought it into the school. But our school nurse, Nurse Annalie, is the point of contact for all questions about our COVID protocols. Her email address is alarson with 2 S's at philasd.org. It's also on our school's website. So we've had a number of families reach out with really specific and great questions about, my child attends this aftercare program, or my child was on a play date and we think someone in the household might have had COVID. What should I do? Nurse Larson is definitely the person to either call or email. I can also answer a lot of those questions, but she truly is the expert. Additionally, she's in constant communication with Student Health Services to communicate and clearly share information about if a student has to isolate because of a positive COVID-19 test, or if they have to quarantine because of a direct contact. She can share the information about what is the starting date, what is the ending date, and in certain circumstances, if your child was exposed via a direct contact, there's an opportunity for them to be tested in the middle of the quarantine period from days 5 to 7 to hopefully return to school as soon as possible. So that's really a case-by-case basis, and Nurse Larson is the person who can answer all of those questions. I wanted to go over it because I do think it's a little bit confusing, but I do appreciate all of the parent questions and concerns we've gotten about it, and please continue to communicate with us regularly about this information. Additionally, I'm going to put in the link to, Janet, I see your question, I'll answer it in 1 second. This is a link to the Student Health Services COVID testing page, where that graphic at the top of the page came from. There is a physical copy of a COVID testing consent form. Unfortunately, this year there is not an electronic version. But if you would like one and you don't have a printer at home, please just call the main office. We'll make sure a hard copy goes home with you. But in order for the nurse to test your child or any child in our building who may be symptomatic, we have to have a COVID testing consent form filled out by the parent. She is not able to test any child for COVID-19 without this consent form on file. Janet, great question. So in the chat, Janet asked the question, what do we do for schooling when students were quarantined? That's a wonderful question, and I'm going to add that information to the slide for the 5 o'clock meeting. So this year, there has been a shift in how the district responds if a child is at home to isolate or quarantine due to a COVID-19 exposure. Last year, when our teachers were teaching on Zoom and many families were home in the hybrid virtual setting, kids could just log on from home. This year, there's a different protocol. They're in the Office of Academic Supports, which is a department of 440 North Broad Street. There are actually designated teachers that are assigned to support students who are quarantining or isolated due to COVID. So the way that it works, and we did this as recently as yesterday, we had some kids who are quarantining from an outside COVID exposure. What we do on the school level is we submit the name of that child. We submit the contact information for the teacher, meaning their email address. And we also submit the parent's contact information, so the name and the parent's email address. And what that goes directly to the Office of Student Supports. And then on the same day, a quarantine leave teacher is what their title is. They contact the teacher and they contact the family. And then that teacher is the go-between between the Henry School and the kids who are at home. And so there's a Zoom link that's shared via the quarantine leave teacher. The quarantine leave teacher is working on the assignments that we're doing at Henry with the kids who are at home on Zoom. And the reason why it feels a little cumbersome, but it actually has worked okay in the past week or so. And the reason why the district moved forward with doing that is just because teachers in the physical school building are not teaching via Zoom at this time. So if your child or any child, and any child at the school does have to quarantine, Miss Rama, who's our school-based teacher leader, is the one who's responsible for coordinating all of those next steps. So for each of the families whose kids have had to be home, sometimes for as few as 3 days, but it could be up to maybe 2 school weeks, she's been sharing this information. Does anybody have questions, any additional questions about the COVID protocols that we have at Henry School that are in place right now?
I have a question, Ms. Davis. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I was in the upper schoolyard this morning. I was watching the aide walk over to the students, and she didn't have her mask covering her nose, but then she was yelling at all the kids who didn't have their mask on. So can you just reiterate to the staff the importance of them covering their noses when they have their masks on, especially when they're really close to the kids in the yards?
Yeah, of course, definitely. And if you want to send me a direct message with who that was, I can follow up with them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Airy, did you have a question? I see you came off mute.
Yeah, Ms. Davis, so I read in the paper this morning that Emlyn School in East Mount Airy has been totally sent home. Is there a plan for how instruction would be carried out if the entire school needed to close? I mean, I'm glad that's not the case now, but it sounds like the situation you're describing with the quarantine leave teacher wouldn't work for a school scale quarantine.
Yeah, I don't have an official answer on that, but what my gut instinct is that it would be similar to what we did 2 Fridays ago on the 3rd when we closed after the storm, right? When everybody's home, then the students take their Chromebooks home and then the teachers teach virtually.
Thank you.
Yeah. What the district is not doing right now that we did last year, if you were a Henry parent last year, is we're not moving forward with quarantining an entire class if one individual tests positive in the classroom. So what we're doing at Henry, and it's been a lot of work, but I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, is that we maintain seating charts throughout the entire building for all student occupied spaces. So these seating charts are live documents. They're updated if there are any changes. And what this allows us to do if we find ourselves in this circumstance is that it allows us to contact trace. So in the situation where an individual tested positive on August 31st, on September 1st, and they came to school on August 31st, what we did is we backtracked. So we could see where was that child in the classroom, where was that individual in the lunchroom, and who was everybody within 6 feet of distance. And then every single one of those families was contacted immediately. And they were contacted before the school-wide notification letter went out. So each time that I've sent a notification letter, understandably, I get an influx of parents concerned that their child was involved or exposed to COVID. But please know that we always contact the direct contacts first, and then the school-wide letter is sent out 20 minutes, 30 minutes later.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? So when you had the case last week and needed to quarantine, how many students were affected and were asked to quarantine because of that one positive case?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. It was on September the 1st, and I believe it affected 5 families.
Thanks. That's helpful.
Ms. Davis, can I ask a quick follow-up question as well? Could you share what the criteria are, I assume from the district, on what would lead either a whole class or a whole school to need to go virtual? I assume they're sort of published.
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. I'd actually need to double check before I could answer because I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I just posted the link in the chat, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, sure. I had shared this in the Northwest Philly School group on Facebook, and then someone shared the chart that gives, like, if there's only one case, we're quarantining the students sitting right near them. If there's 3 cases, it's the whole class. If it's more than 6, it's the whole school. So here's the link. You have to scroll down pretty far to see the chart. There's a lot of information there, but the table gives you the thresholds for what's the criteria for just a handful of students, a whole class. And
Thank you. And that's the current criteria?
should be. It's direct from the district website.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
great.
you, Allison. Perfect. That's exactly what I was.
I appreciate it. And the only thing that I'd say about that, if it's from the district website, that's excellent. Sometimes, and School District of Philadelphia did this last year, where sometimes they create guidelines or protocols that are stricter than what the city's guidance is. I know when they were quarantining entire classes last year, that actually wasn't the guidance from PDPH, but it was what the School District of Philadelphia moved forward with doing. So sometimes there can be a discrepancy there, but if that's on the district website, then that's great information. Thank you. I just received a private question as well. just asking about kids who are sitting on the rug, we are also maintaining seating charts on rugs. So it applies to when kids are sitting at desks or tables, as well as if they have, if they're on the carpet, there's assigned seats. And the class where kids had to come home, there wasn't a classroom rug in it, but we do have those as well.
Is there any policy for siblings? So if one kid has to get quarantined and then their siblings, because I know my kids like breathe on each other a lot,
Yeah,
does that apply to them as well?
that's a great question. That came from Amy, right? So that would be something to follow up with Nurse Larson, but my instinct is the answer is no. I know it might not seem like that's the right answer, but when that would be considered a second degree of removal. So it's just talking about direct contact. So that would be a great question from Ms. Larson. Yep.
Hi, Ms. Davis, it's Helen. The upper school kids aren't assigned lockers, I'm told, because of COVID. So what is the premise behind that, and will that change? Because I see these kids, their book bags I think they're all going to have back problems by the end of the school year with these heavy book bags because they have to carry everything with them. So why is it that is it because the lockers are too close? So what's the situation with the lockers?
Yeah, so great question. So we have roughly 250 to 275 kids in the upper school. And the lockers, if you haven't been on the second floor of our building, they are stacked one on top of each other and they line the entire hallway. So in previous years, 2 years ago, when we used lockers, the kids would access their lockers in the morning and then they would access their lockers in the afternoon. It is a very crowded situation where the kids are literally crouching over each other, crawling underneath each other to get to their lockers. At this time, we just decided that it was not the safest thing for us to do, bringing that many students into a small space together. That's not to say that we can't make adjustments throughout the school year, but we wanted to start the school year off without introducing that level of potential exposure because it felt fairly high risk. I do think as we're getting situated into our school-wide procedures and routines, there can be a place to introduce lockers and schedule how kids are in the hallway. So rather than having 6 classes of 25 kids, 28 kids at once, we can stagger it class by class. But that has not been, we just weren't ready to do that in the first couple of weeks of school.
Okay, I would just ask you to make that only because the book bags are so heavy. I see, and I know Carson's carrying all of his books and, they're moving from classroom to classroom, so they have to carry everything with them. So it's, I think it's a little concern of mine because I put my hand up underneath it. It weighs 1,000,000 tons. And I've seen some of the kids literally hunched over coming to school. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks for your feedback, I understand. Janet, I just see that you wrote a comment in the chat and I want to clarify. Janet wrote, if you feel more comfortable having your kids quarantine if their sibling needs to, virtual instruction can be arranged. I want to clarify that we're actually, your child cannot stay home from school virtually and log in and be marked present for school. So if you mean through the quarantine leave teacher, that for a child who was directly contacted, that's true. But for a sibling, the school district policy right now doesn't permit us to do that and mark a child absent. Of course, as a parent, you always make a decision. If it's too much of a risk to send your child to school, you won't. But we wouldn't be in a position that if they stayed home and worked virtually, we wouldn't be able to mark them present. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next slide. And we can definitely come back to more COVID questions in a few minutes. So the next point, something that we've talked a lot about in these past couple of weeks relates to arrival and dismissal. First of all, I've received a lot of feedback from families about our arrival and dismissal procedure. So thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. One of the biggest pain points I'd say so far is that if you're a parent that has kids who come through multiple doors. So if you're a parent who maybe has a child in Mr. Peoples' class or Ms. Morris's class, you're using door 7, which is over by the staff parking lot or any of the kindergarten rooms or Miss Rasher's room. And then you also have a child who might need to come in through the portables or in Ms. Harback's class or Mr. Gillen's class. I know it's tricky, right? So we don't expect you to be in 2 places at once. And I'm just going to share a little bit about what's worked for us as we've worked through these kinks, because we've definitely worked through them and we're seeing more success on a daily basis. So if you're a parent with kids who are using multiple doors, we can absolutely make adjustments on an individual level to our arrival and dismissal plans. We've been doing it and it's been making the process smoother and easier for all families involved. I'm still at the point where I don't want to go back to having everybody congregate on the upper schoolyard because it just feels like voluntarily bringing too large of a group together. But let's say hypothetically you have a child in kindergarten or you have a child in one of the classes that enters or exits on the far side of the building, and then you have to come down to the lower schoolyard as well. What we're doing is finding one central location that is working your children and for you. So, the priority is definitely not priority. The most urgent situation is for our youngest students who are not able to independently travel throughout the school building. So for a kindergarten student, it is most helpful as a parent to do arrival and dismissal directly at their classroom door. If you have a child who's old enough to walk throughout the building and understands how to navigate, we've been making circumstances where the kid can walk directly through the classroom and just go right up to their room. Additionally, another accommodation that we've coordinated is picking one door and just using one door for families that might have 2, 3, or 4 kids. So sometimes that's the main entrance. And then we have members of our team who can help kids travel throughout the building. Depending on what classes your kids are in, we have some families who drop off multiple kids at the portable doors on the lower schoolyard by our playground, and the kids walk straight through that door. So the best thing to do is to coordinate with the teacher of your eldest student. So let's say you have a kindergarten and a 5th grader, shoot the 5th grade teacher an email and say, hey, I'm trying to streamline the arrival and dismissal process. Like, can my 5th grader meet at this door instead? We've been approving 100% of those requests, and it's been smoothing out our process overall. If you're not sure who to ask or you're not sure what the solution is, send me or Mr. Wilson an email and we'll help figure out what will work best for you and your family. One thing that I want to clarify is that we do have a dismissal window. So technically our school day is over at 3:24 p.m. That is the end of the school day, but we're dismissing from 3:15 to 3:24. So similar to last year when school wrapped up a little bit earlier, we had a dismissal period from 3 o'clock to 3:09. At the end of the dismissal period, that's when teachers are bringing all of the students back into the building who haven't been picked up yet. So if you are a parent of an upper school kid, oftentimes most of our kids are walking home or they're responsible for their own dismissal plan. But if you're a parent of a child who gets picked up or they're a younger grade, our school cafeteria is the place where our students for late pickup wait to be picked up. So if you're a couple minutes late, I'd say the best thing to do is to send a message to your teacher via Remind or Class Dojo. And teachers usually hang around a minute or two, especially if they know that you're on your way. But if you're going to be more than 1 or 2 minutes late, you should always go directly to the main entrance on Carpenter Lane. And we have individuals who wait at the front desk with a walkie-talkie. So we're limiting the ways that parents are walking throughout the building. We're not using multiple doors or traveling down, but a member of our dismissal team will call down to the cafeteria and the kiddos will come right up to you. I'd say there's a little bit of a sweet spot in between like 3:24 and 3:27 when teachers, are walking throughout the building. Like if a kindergarten student is being late to pick up. So if that's the case and you notice that your child's dismissal door is closed, we ask that you just kindly come to the main entrance and we'll make sure that your child gets to you. Does anybody have any questions about arrival and or dismissal?
Hi, I'm just wondering if kids can be reminded that they should be wearing their masks when they're congregating before and after school and playing on the schoolyard before and after school. A lot of kids are not wearing them, and I don't want our school to end up like Emlyn. And also, it just seems like they're really getting used to playing with each other again. And there's been some conflict. I saw some boys in my daughter's grade were getting a little too rough playing basketball, and I intervened. And it's my understanding that yesterday some middle school girls got in a physical fight before school. So thank you.
Yeah. Yep, so we'll continue to encourage people to wear masks outside. We have masks available in the school. We're handing out many every single morning as kids come in, as much as possible that parents can help out with that, make sure that they're sending their children to school with a mask. That's very, very helpful. I mean, per school district policy, masks are actually not required outside, but we are requiring them at Henry. So at recess, absolutely. And we're going to continue to do our best in the morning and in the afternoon. And we can make sure that we have more masks available outside for kids if they're coming in the morning by themselves. And then just in response to what you shared around conflict, yeah, absolutely. I echo that sentiment. We've seen what I would call an uptick in culture and climate needs in the building in the past couple weeks. And I'll say that it's not entirely, I'm not entirely surprised, right? Our kids have been home for over a year, and there's definitely some growing pains with ways that we're resolving conflict and communicating with one another. So we're definitely, as a priority, and we're working on it. But thank you for your feedback. I just wanted to pause a minute because I see that Mr. Wilson has logged on. Mr. Wilson, do you want to come off mute? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just introduce yourself to the group.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Give me one moment, I'm just gonna spotlight you.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you. Good morning, Henry community. My name is Mr. Wilson. I am the new proud assistant principal at Henry this year. I am so glad to be able to be a part of your school community, to serve your school community. Please feel free to reach out if there's any feedback or concerns regarding anything within the school community. I look forward to working with you and serving you and your children. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Can you talk a little bit just about the experience you bring at Henry and what you've been doing in the school district for the past couple of years?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. So I've been in various different school communities. I spent some time at McDaniel Elementary, Meredith Elementary. Last year, I was at a certified school counselor at Sullivan Elementary. So in addition to instructional leadership, I also bring a lot of that social and emotional support with my toolkit. I spend the majority of my time as a certified school counselor. I spend one of the wheelhouses that I plan to really integrate into my instructional leadership toolbox as I lead with Principal Davis this school year.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And earlier on when you were in another meeting, I just let families know that when they're communicating with me, they can feel free to CC you on any questions or concerns about climate, culture, operations, or instruction, really everything. So
absolutely, I'm happy to serve you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm gonna just go back to sharing my screen. All right, there we go. And so thank you for the welcomes to Mr. Wilson. He's really been an asset in these past couple of weeks, and I'm so glad to have him as a part of our team. So yeah, last question I see around arrival and dismissal is from Monica. Thank you. Inclement weather arrival and dismissal procedures. So I'll be honest in telling you, anytime that we have to run an inclement weather arrival procedure, it's not great. It wasn't great before COVID. It's still not great. And the reason why it's not great is because it is difficult as a school leader to open the school building at a time when my entire staff is not here. So the teachers' school day doesn't begin until 8:35. And the people who begin earlier in the day are mostly one-to-one special education assistants who do not typically have school-wide responsibilities when it comes to managing groups of kids. That can be a challenge. That said, we always know there's going to be days where it's raining or snowing in the morning. We had to shift our arrival procedures for inclement weather due to social distancing. So when your kids were coming, if they were K to 3 coming into the cafeteria, to the auditorium, we used to have kids sitting in every single seat. We no longer do that because of social distancing. So we had to add a third space as a place where kids could come in the morning in order to make sure that we're safe and spread out. And I think it was on the second or third day of school. So looking at the forecast, it looks like we may have another day this week where it's going to be raining in the morning. So we're going to continue to improve upon what we did in the first week of school. So the things that I think can be better are we did have some children who were rushing in without a mask and got their mask in the hallway. We're going to be working to make sure that they get the mask, hopefully before they come through the door, but if not, that they don't get through the front area without a mask on. Additionally, we had people who were, for our youngest kids, our kindergartners, our first graders who don't really know the school building, we just need additional staff to help the drop off with parents, bringing them into the auditorium. So we're going to make sure that we're geared up in that way, in a way to have greater success. And then I'd say if you have the flexibility at home to not drop your child off before 8:45, that's very helpful because it's hard to open the building earlier. So if you are able to hang back a little bit on days when it's raining, rather than having your kid come at 8:20 or 8:30, that definitely helps us just with crowd control. Any other questions about inclement weather arrival or dismissal? It is I just want to say it's very rare that we run an inclement weather dismissal procedure. We've only done it once or twice since I've become the principal at Henry. And if that's ever the circumstance, I will send out a school-wide message and let families know. But generally, if it's raining during dismissal, we run exactly the same dismissal procedures. Kids just have raincoats or umbrellas. I think I heard somebody come off of mute.
This is Orion. I did. I just wanted to say just really quickly, it might be helpful. And I know I heard what you just said about having, a limited number of staff, but maybe to be helpful on those days when there is inclement weather, to have someone come out and just say, hey guys, it's indoor admission. And I just say that because the last time when we had it, it's only been once obviously, but I had to kind of direct some kids that they needed to come in. And sometimes kids, if you're not an authority figure that they know, they kind of look at you like with disbelief, like, okay, I hear you, but I'm not going to move. So I kind of had to be a little assertive with it. So, and it was quite a few kids back there who hadn't gotten that message. They were a little older. So, obviously they might not be on my mind or not getting that message. So just wanted to mention that in case there was, kids kind of hanging around back there. I don't want to be inappropriate with them, because they're not my children, but I still want to kind of direct them.
Thank you, Orion. That's helpful.
Sure.
And then I just want to clarify, because I know parents are not in the auditorium and I see some feedback. I know it was hard for kindergartners. I think it was the second day or third day of kindergarten, which is not ideal. But just for kindergarten parents to know, the reason why I didn't have a lot of staff in the main entrance is because they were actually in the auditorium working with kids. So I was standing at the auditorium door, and then we had 4 individuals in the auditorium, Miss Malika, Miss Linda, Miss Ashley, and Mr. Jacobs. And 2 of them were specifically designated to kindergarten. So the kindergarten kids, once they leave your hands and come through the auditorium doors, they're taken, directly to their seat, because we don't expect them to know where to walk or where to sit. They're still learning each other's names. I do think it was a little scary for the kids because they've been at home because of COVID. They haven't been in an auditorium with a large number of people. But please know that it's very organized. The kids have assigned seating and assigned rows that they sit in. And our kindergarten families know that the kindergarten teachers always dismiss last from the auditorium. And the reason for that is to let the commotion of the other class leave, and then to make sure that if there's any families who are coming a little bit late, the teachers wait until they have a quiet auditorium so the kids can line up and they understand where they're going. So we definitely have a procedure that we run, and it takes a little bit of time, but the priority is to keep the kids safe. So thanks for your feedback. Hopefully we will have a smoother experience next time, and we'll continue to work on it.
My kindergarten child told me that someone helped him right away, and I was very happy to hear it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely, we don't have kindergartners walking around the building without somebody escorting them at any time, because we do have a long building. It's pretty big, and we don't expect the kids to know where they're going. And I see Amy wrote that too. Same for first graders, because we have at least 15 of our first graders who didn't come back to the building for hybrid in kindergarten. So this is really like their first experience in the school building. So that's definitely taken into consideration. Okay, the last thing, this is just a repeat slide from the last time. We have still uploaded to our website. I want to just reiterate that kids cannot wear flip-flops or open back shoes to school. It's not safe. Our Spirit Wear sale closed yesterday. We had over 200 orders for Spirit Wear, which is awesome. I'm glad people liked the colors and the designs for this year. Usually our Spirit Wear sale, it closed at midnight last night. And so the turnaround is pretty quick. We're going to be finalizing with the vendor company. And I don't have a date when they're going to be delivered to the school, but I do hope it's going to be hopefully by October. It'll be pretty soon. So if you did not have a chance to purchase any Spirit Wear, don't worry, we are going to have 2 sales this year, and there'll be a sale coming in the springtime. All right, that brings us to the end.
I have a question, Miss Davis. Why do you always say our shirt color is navy blue? And you're not requiring or requesting that the kids wear a blue shirt this year, are you?
All schools in the school district of Philadelphia have to have a uniform color. It's a non-negotiable. So our color is blue.
Right, but it doesn't mean that the kids have to wear blue. That was what I was asking. Okay, asking why. Okay.
Not at this time. Nope.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of families who like to just purchase one thing for their kids to wear. So if that applies to you, that would be a navy blue shirt. And if we have families in need of any clothing, or your kids grew and you can't buy more clothes for school, we have hundreds of lightly used navy blue shirts that I would be more than happy to share with the school community. But our dress code is a solid colored top. Thank you for the question. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the information that I prepared in the slides, but I'm sure I didn't cover everything. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you can feel free to raise a virtual hand or drop your questions in the chat.
Did the counselor ever come in?
Give me a minute to check.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Miss Austin,
Hi.
let me spotlight you, and if you could just talk a little bit about your background. If you are, give me 1 second. Awesome. Okay, please introduce yourself.
All right, so I'm Jessica Austin. I'm the counselor here at Henry. I'm excited to be here. This is my 15th year with the School District of Philadelphia as a counselor. I support all students, grades K to 8. I know Kate had mentioned about school selection. So yes, generally it starts very early around this time. I haven't had official word about when the school selection is going to start. It's going to be soon. As soon as I get that information, I'm going to relay it to students and families. I will probably be using Reminds to give updates. I already posted for the 8th graders an open house for Saul. So just keep an eye out on Remind for those updates. But like I said, the timeline has not been released yet. I just checked with someone at 440. They said information will be coming soon. So as soon as I get that, I'm going to make that available to you. If you're familiar with the school selection process, there are a few changes. That's why we're kind of holding off on relaying the information until we get those updates. So it's going to be different than the school selection platform that students have used in the past. It's going to be My Choice. So a couple small changes coming, but I'm looking forward to working with you guys and with your children.
I have a question for you. I have a 7th grader. What are the expectations for us in terms of directing or guiding our 7th graders in preparation for, I guess, what's going to happen in the 8th grade? I've heard people say it's the 7th grade that they take, not the 8th grade is what they look for, etc.
That's a great question. I did pop into all the 8th and 7th grade classes just to introduce myself and let them know that I'm going to be working with them closely this year, also 7th grade. And yes, 7th grade is quite important for the school selection process because students start applying so early in 8th grade and they're already being accepted into schools sometimes as early as January. when they're making their selections, they are looking at 6th grade, but probably most heavily on the 7th grade. So I did speak with the students about how important that 7th grade year is. And I encourage them when I send information about open houses that they, start looking into those schools to get more information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning. Welcome to Henry. I also have a 7th grader like Miss Helen. My question is, you sent out a link for parents to register, and it's kept sending me to Google Classroom. Can you send out directions on how to log on to that? Because I tried different things and I couldn't get it to work.
Sure, maybe there's a password. I did have some parents join through it, but I can repost it and maybe have the password and some instructions on how to access it.
Okay, thank you.
But so far, I've only posted the open house for Saul.
Okay.
Still on Remind as well.
Okay.
You know what? I'm one of the parents that was able to join, and the only way I was able to join was by actually signing in to my son's Google Classrooms account. The advantage of it is now I have the Google Classrooms on my phone. Somehow it made it all work. So, but it's not separate. I'm actually part of his Google Classroom now.
Yeah, Monica, I think that's Monica. I tried that too, and that still didn't work for me. But maybe we can connect later, and you can.
Sure, we can try.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll look into it on my end and see what revisions I can make.
Jesse, I think you had a question in the chat from someone else named Jesse.
I don't see it, I'm sorry.
Okay, it just says, will there be any one-on-one counseling for kids for trauma over the past year and a half if requested? What about grief counseling, etc.?
So that's a great question. So, I service all students at Henry. So if you have a concern about your child, I can certainly meet with them. I'm going to post my email so you can reach out to me. And we are requesting, there's a place, it used to be called the Center for Grieving Children and Families. It's now called Uplift. They're a great agency. I've worked with them in the past. They will be conducting a grief group here at Henry. I think they're starting virtual. I would kind of prefer that they're in person. But we do have Henry on the list. So when I get more information about when they want to start that group, I'll send information to parents if you're interested in having your child participate.
I didn't see, what is it that you guys are saying? What did you send out in terms of us joining? Because I didn't get anything. I'm also, my name is Helen Salahuddin, the PTA rep for the upper school. So I'd like to be able to, be able to help if parents need things, but I didn't see what it was that you sent out for us to join.
On Remind, I posted a link to my Google Classroom. So anytime I get information about open houses or the high school virtual fair, I'm gonna post it on Remind, but I'll also post it in my Google Classroom. And some parents have difficulty accessing the Google Classroom, so I just need to look into it. I'm not very tech savvy, but I'll look into it and try to fix that.
We'll get you there, Jesse, no worries. And then also, if you could just share the information with me around how families can join your Remind, I'll make sure to share that out so that everybody can access that.
Yeah, because I'm on Remind, but I don't have anything from you.
Ms. Helen, I just checked. She sent it out on September the 3rd. And she should, if you're under the whole 7th grade link,
Maybe that's my problem. It's a different link. Yeah, so Ms. Davis, each year we have to sign in again. I'm getting your information. I've gotten stuff from Mr. Wilson, but that's it.
Sorry, not to cut you off. No, so each year families don't need to sign up for the school-wide account. What I do is I carry over Like if you were a 6th grade parent, I renamed the account to be 7th grade and we just change it. So you don't have to sign up for school-wide. But the thing that's different is that the classroom teachers start a new one. So the school-wide account is where I send out information about changes to the dismissal period, you know, notification letters, information about these meetings. But Jessie, which Remind class did you send the information to?
I asked to join or host all the 7th and 8th grade classrooms.
With the classroom teachers?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the Remind that's either owned by Ms. Canarini or Ms. Harley. So Helen, we'll just make sure that we get it to you in the right place. And sometimes it's easy to miss a message, especially if you're in multiple classes. The great thing about Remind is that they don't get deleted. So I heard someone say it was sent on the 3rd. So if you are an upper school parent, you want to go back up there. If not, send Ms. Austin an email and we'll make sure it gets to you.
Okay,
But thank you.
thank you.
And then Jessie, I just saw one, Miss Austin, I saw one other question in the chat just around the school selection process for kids who might be interested in magnet middle schools. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the best way for parents to ask you questions and get more information about that?
Sure. So I'm going to be meeting like with the 8th graders one-on-one. So I'm going to be really focusing on working with them and the 7th grade, but of course for students that are in other grades like 4th grade, I think the best thing probably just to email me your questions and we can maybe schedule a meeting or we could talk over the phone and I can provide you information that way.
Can the parent be notified when you meet with the student individually? Because I would like to be there when you meet with my son Shane, even if it's just virtual.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I usually just kind of touch base like one-on-one just to, you know, see if they have any questions. And then I usually call the parent afterwards to let them know we met and how they're feeling about the process. But if you want to be a part of it, we can do that. So that's for Shane.
Shane Broadwater, he's in Miss Harley's. He's 7th grade.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Any other questions for Ms. Austin at this time?
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say really quickly, and likewise, if you are able to get to Miss Austin for any reason, you can always use me as well as a resource. Again, I'm coming from the school counseling background as well, so we tag team and work together. So if you can't get to Miss Austin for whatever reason, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than welcome to support as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And Ms. Austin, I was typing your last name into the chat, so that's why I didn't realize that you weren't here before because you're on as counselor. So I apologize if I skipped over you earlier. Thanks, Ms. Austin.
Thank you.
So they're going to be sticking around for a little bit, but does anybody just more broadly have any questions before we wrap up this morning? I just want to remind everybody that these meetings are held every other Tuesday, and they're always an earlier one and a later one. So if you do have a question that comes up for you, I will be logged on at 5 o'clock tonight. Mr. Wilson and Ms. Austin won't be with me, but I will be representing their information on their behalf. And I do always try to upload these recordings to YouTube. Can't always do it within one day, but I try to do it within 1 to 2 days. So that link can be accessed on the Henry School website. If you click on the Principal's Corner, there's a link to our YouTube channel. And if you have a question that applies specifically to you or your child, you can feel free to hang back and ask it. But otherwise, I'm just really grateful for your participation and everybody's time. So thank you all. I hope to see you soon. Stay safe and stay healthy. Have a great rest of your morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.